Om Mahyanativanasya Chanansana Om Mahyanativanasya Chanansana Slakya Saksham Veritam Yina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Recording in progress.
Om Vishya Padaki Sapastai Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharina Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Deshatani. So we are continuing Canto 4, Chapter 29, verses 75 till 85. We will go to the end of the chapter today. The fifth session we have on this chapter. So, to become liberated from the subtle body is very, very subtle and extremely difficult. So why? It is the subtle body in which all our desires rest. Our karma rests within that subtle body. So the gross desires, they're all there. So what does it take to vanquish the whole stockpile of this desire, of all these desires? Karma is in the form of desires. There must be a complete disinterest for acting on this platform. That's required. I do not want to become happy independently from Krishna. I don't want to turn my back to Krishna anymore, because it means samsara, dukkha, miseries. Krishna Buddhi Sai Jiva Anadi Bayar Mukha Ataiva Maya Tare Samsara Dukkha. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity, has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy Maya gives him all kinds of miseries in his material existence. It is not worth to take another birth because of some insignificant material desires. Again, this is what Sanat Kumara taught. His instruction was to develop detachment from the body concept of life and from all the desires that we wish to fulfill, and on the other side, gain attachment to Krishna. So we must be truly convinced that these material desires are not worthy of fulfilling. Gross desires are easier to renounce than subtle desires. But Labha, Puja, Pratishta, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes these as weeds around our devotional service. So these desires, these are desires of greediness, desires to be worshipped, desires to be respected, and so many others that come as weeds in the guise of the Bhakti Lata. And we should not cultivate these. These weeds choke up all our attention for hearing and chanting. These are very luxuriant weeds which prevent us to get the actual fruit, which is Prema Bhakti. As Kapila Muni describes in the third canto, this subtle body should be dissolved by devotional service, and the process for dissolving it is devotional service. This brings us to the point where one gives up all false identities and thinks oneself as the center of the universe. The false ego is the most fine and subtle covering of the soul. It places us Yeah, that's because the real ego places us as a servant of Krishna. Thus, yes, ahankar, that ahankar is a function or aspect of the chitta. Devotional service, as we heard yesterday, is a change of consciousness. We continue, and if Lord Krishna willing, we will conclude his teachings today. Now we have text 75 here on the screen. Anena purusa puruso dehan upadate vimunchati harsam sokam vayam dukam sukham shanena vindati. Can someone read the translation, please?
By virtue of the processes, can I read?
Yep. Please, Mataji.
Thank you, Maharaj. By virtue of the processes of the subtle body, the living entity develops and gives up gross bodies. This is known as the transmigration of the soul. Thus, the soul becomes subjected to different types of so-called enjoyment, lamentation, fear, happiness, and unhappiness. Thank you.
Thank you. The soul becomes subjected to enjoyment, lamentation, fear, happiness, and unhappiness. So yam yam vapis mrambavan tayam tante kalevram. According to our desires at the time of death, we get a new body. The soul becomes controlled by the feelings of happiness and misery. It pulls the happiness, that's what we want, and we push away the misery, and we are situated as such in a self-centered way, becoming deeply entangled. So, in the next two verses we will hear an example to show what happens at the time of death. Yeah, can someone read the translation?
The caterpillar transports itself from one leaf to another by capturing one leaf before giving up the other. Similarly, according to his previous work, the living entity must capture another body before giving up the one he has. This is because the mind is a reservoir of all kinds of desires.
The same topic of transmigration was spoken by Kamsa to Vasudeva. This little caterpillar or little worm is described by Vasudeva. The worm is on one leaf, and when it is transferring oneself from one leaf to another, the subtle body moves through its desires to a suitable condition or mentality, and when the subtle body is in that state, the rest of the body moves over or is constructed. Sariram yatnyam avapnoti yashap ukramatishvara Ghetvaitani samyanti vairugandam ivasayat. Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. The living entity in the material world carries his different conception of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes on one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Now I will start reading a part of the purport. A living entity, too much absorbed in material activity, becomes very much attracted to the material body. Even at the point of death, He thinks of his present body and the relatives connected to it. Thus he remains fully absorbed in the body conception of life, so much that even at the point of death, he abhors leaving his present body. Sometimes it is found that a person on the verge of death remains in a coma for many days before giving up the body. This is common among so-called leaders and politicians who think that without their presence the entire country and society will be in chaos. This is called Maya. So much attachment is there. They don't know where they are going, and they are concerned about everyone else. So we'll continue reading.
तो कुछ जो होती है ना बड़ी चीज जो आप पैर ऐसे नहीं करते मूव करने के लिए उसका हैंडल लेना.
So political leaders do not like to leave their political posts, and they have to be shot by an enemy to be obliged to leave by the arrival of death. Obliged to leave by the arrival of death. By superior arrangement, a living entity is offered another body because of his attraction to the present body. He does not like to transfer himself to another body. Thus, he is forced by the laws of nature. So that next body is based on his current mind before he leaves his body. The same thing is described by Vasudeva in the beginning of the 10th canto. This is Vasudeva's preaching to Kamsa. As soon as the present body stops functioning and mixes with the 5 elements of material nature, then the living entity within the body accepts another body according to its present actions and reactions. It is just like a man walking on the street. He puts forward his foot, and when he is confident that his foot is situated on sound ground, then he lifts the other foot. He accepts one body after another, and the soul transmigrates. So, see how the plant worm moves from one twig to another so carefully. The living entity changes his body, and as soon as higher authorities decide about his next body, as soon as the living entity is conditioned in this material world, he must take material bodies one after another. His next particular body is offered by the laws of material nature as a reaction to his life. This body is just like a body which we always see in dreams. During our dream or sleep, we create so many bodies according to our mental creation. We have seen gold and we have seen a mountain, and in a dream we can see a golden mountain by combining the two ideas. This concept was also presented by Narada Muni to King Prachinabarisat. Sometimes in dreams we see that we have a body flying in the sky, and at that time we completely forget our present body. Similarly, these bodies are changing. If you have one body, you forget the past body. During a dream we make contact with so many new kinds of bodies. We forget them all. And actually these material bodies are the creation of our mental activities. So it is not sufficient to do the physical activities of Krishna consciousness, but one must also mentally cultivate Krishna consciousness. then through the affection, Krishna consciousness is evoked. But at the present moment we do not recollect our past bodies. The nature of the mind is flickering. Accepting and rejecting is the action of the mind in contact with the 5 objects of sense gratification: form, smell, taste, sound, and touch. In its speculative way, the mind comes in touch with the objects of sense gratification. When the living entity desires a particular type of body, he gets it. Therefore, the body is an offering by the laws of material nature. The living entity accepts the material body, comes out again in the material world to enjoy or suffer according to the construction of the body. Unless we have a particular body, type of body, we cannot enjoy or suffer according to our mental proclivities inherited from the previous life. The particular type of body is offered according to our mental condition at the time of death. The luminous planets like the sun, moon, and stars reflect themselves in different types of reservoirs like water, oil, or ghee. The reflection moves according to the movement of the reservoir. The reflection of the water makes the moon also appearing to be moving. But actually the moon is not moving. Similarly, by mental concoction, the living entity attains different kinds of bodies, but he has no connection with such bodies. On account of illusion, being enchanted by the influence of Maya, the living entity thinks that he belongs to a different kind of body. That is the way of conditioned life. The body identification is so strong, and Srila Prabhupada said that compared to the body intoxication, all other intoxications are like salt and pepper, just added spice. The attachment to the body is the main intoxication. It disallows the soul to understand who he is. Suppose a living entity is now in a human form of body. He thinks that he belongs to the human community or a particular type of country or a particular place. He identifies in that way and unnecessarily prepares for another body which is not required by him. Such desires and mental concoctions are the cause of different types of bodies. What realizations do you have after hearing this? It is not worthy. We have nothing to do with it. It's like a dream. And we have also nothing to do with the mind's desires either. It's all on a material level. And this is the identification that we have. And thus, that must be changed. This is the mental cultivation of Krishna consciousness. The identification must be changed to Shivera Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nitya Das Gopi Bhakta Kamalayo Das Anudas Anudas. The covering influence of the material nature is so strong that the living entity is satisfied in whatever body he gets. And he identifies with this body with great pleasure. We request you not to be overwhelmed by your mind and body. So Vasudeva was fearing for Devaki's life. Kamsa pulled Devaki by her hair, and he was about to kill her with his sword. Vasudeva told him not to be caught up so much with his body and his mind. This was the point that was given in the previous verse. We are subject to this happiness and distress of the body and the mind, and it is not us. We are subjected to them. by the power of Maya and our attachment to the concepts of ourselves as the body and the mind. So now it's a long purport, but we go to the third last paragraph here. Starting with the root cause, can someone read this from their beginning, the root cause, till the end?
The root cause of one's association is the mind. This great Krishna consciousness movement is the greatest boon to human society because it is teaching everyone to think always of Krishna by executing devotional service. In this way, at the end of life, one may be transferred to the association of Krishna. This is technically called Nitya Lila Pravishta, entering into the planet Goloka Vrindavan. Bhagavad Gita 18:55 explains, Bhaktya mama vijanati yavanyashasmi tattvataha tato mam tattato gyatva vishate tadanantara. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full Krishna consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. After the mind is completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, one can enter the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan. To enter the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to understand Krishna. The process of understanding Krishna is devotional service. After understanding Krishna as he is, one can become eligible to enter Krishna Loka and associate with him. The mind is the cause of such an exalted position. The mind can also get one a body like those of dogs and hawks. To absorb the mind always in Krishna consciousness is therefore the greatest perfection of human life.
Thank you. Bhagavad Gita 6.5 Udaretatmanatmanam atmanam avasadayat atyeva yatmana atmeva ripu atmana. When the mind becomes attached to Krishna, then the mind is the best friend. It's the best friend. To become attached to Krishna's beauty, to become attached to Krishna's pastimes, his form, his holy name, then the mind becomes one's best friend. And to become attached to anything else in the material world, then the mind is our enemy, because it is going to cause our rebirth. Now, text 78. Someone read the translation.
Hare Krishna.
Please.
As long as we desire to enjoy sense gratification, we create material activities. When the living entity acts in the material field, he enjoys the senses, and while enjoying the senses, he creates another series of material activities. In this way, the living entity becomes entrapped as a conditioned soul.
Entrapped, yes. Now, next text, 79, is the final verse of Narada Muni's teaching to King Prachina Barisat, and it's the conclusion. Yeah. Can someone read?
You should always know that this cosmic manifestation is created, maintained, and annihilated by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, everything within this cosmic manifestation is under the control of the Lord. To be enlightened by this perfect knowledge, one should always engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord.
Thank you. Not done. So self-realization, understanding oneself as Brahman or spirit soul is very difficult in a material condition. So why it is very difficult? Because the mind is attached to wanting something of this world. Also because of bad habits. We don't want to give up all the wonderful things we possess in this world. We don't trust Krishna, and we do not want to put us in Krishna's hands. No Sharanagati. Sharanagati means placing oneself under Krishna's protection. We are even not conscious of our own desires. We are under the self-deluding potency of not knowing what one is. It is the strongest of illusions, practically speaking. What is the cure for that? What is the cure for that tendency of lack of awareness? We don't even know how much we are deeply attached to this body. How deeply entangled you are in the body attachment. How can you strive to give up your attachment if you are not aware of it? The foolish politician, Srila Prabhupada says, is so attached to his position, thinking that everything will fall apart without him, but at the same time is not aware that because of his attachment that he will become a dog in his next life. So what is the cure for this entangling illusion, what we even don't know of what it is? We see pieces of our illusion smashed by the material energy. But if we are in knowledge that we are in illusion, then what is the next step when we are in knowledge? Trinatapi Sunichana. We have to become humble. If we become aware even a little of our illusion and delusion of grandeur, and we think we are so great, even the dogs think, this is my territory, and if another dog enters it, that they won't tolerate. If someone dares to enter in their territory, they just become ferocious. They will bark and kill even. This is a delusion of grandeur. Actually, they are just dogs. They are so insignificant. And Krishna kindly so arranges the material nature as such that it shatters our false ego. Krishna has arranged the physical world especially to do this, to shatter the false conceptions of ourselves. And we are always trying to manipulate the material world so that we can forget, that we can avoid surrender to Krishna, avoid returning to our shelter. Narada Muni's conclusion is to see Krishna as the supreme controller. He is ultimately controlling everything. It is not you, it is not chance. Whether you like it or not, you have to surrender. The forces of material nature are too powerful. What Puranjan saw, we are being confronted with continuously. They are out of control, not out of control. They are out of our control. They are in Krishna's control. When one surrenders to Krishna, when one is in his hands, Suridam Sarva Bhutanam Sarva Lokam Ashvadam, then Shantim Richam, Shantimam Richati. So that is the only person who can be peaceful. Otherwise it's not possible. So just read the first line, of the purport. Self-realization, understanding oneself as Brahman or spirit soul is very difficult in a material condition. So why Deva Yesa Gunamai Mama Maya Drachaya? This material nature is so tricky. It is empowered by Krishna to disallow our escape. That is why it is so difficult. We try to get out. Maya will use that very same thing to keep us in this world. So can someone read the rest of the purport till the end, starting with however, if we accept.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
However, if we accept the devotional service of the Lord will gradually reveal himself. In this way, the progressive devotee will gradually realize his spiritual position. We cannot see anything in the darkness of night, not even on our own selves. But when there is sunshine, we can see not only the sun, but everything within the world as well. Lord Krishna explains in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Maya sakta manah partha yogam yunjan madashraya asamshayam samagramam yatha gyasyasi tachinu. Now hear, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. When we engage ourselves in the devotional service of the Lord to become Krishna conscious, we understand not only Krishna, but everything related to Krishna. In other words, through Krishna consciousness, we can understand not only Krishna and the cosmic manifestation, but also our constitutional position. In Krishna consciousness, we can understand that the entire material creation is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, maintained by Him, annihilated by Him, and absorbed in Him. We are also part and parcel of the Lord. Everything is under the control of the Lord. And therefore, our only duty is to surrender unto the Supreme and engage in His transcendental loving service.
Thank you. So, the verse of the Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Maya sakta manapata yogam yogamatashraya. That's basically what Sanat Kumar told Prithu Maharaj. The mind has to become attached to Krishna. One who is Krishna conscious sees everything in relation to Krishna. He understands how nature, Maya, is working. That he understands how the transmigration of the soul is working under the supervision of the Supersoul. And he knows how to get out of it. Devotional service. Now Maitreya is going to end this pastime. Maitreya is speaking to Vidura, and Maitreya is describing what Narada Muni said to King Prachinavarishad, text 80. Can someone read text 80?
The great sage Maitreya continued, the supreme devotee, the great saint Narad, thus explained to King Prachin Bhari the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. After giving an invitation to the king, Narad Muni left to return to Siddhaloka.
Siddhaloka. He left. That, so there is so much information about what this invitation was. That Narad gave his instructions and he left, remember that King Prachinavarishad was performing these pious material activities, karma kanda activities performed for gaining unending material pleasure. That this karma kanda is a philosophy taught by Gautama Rishi. The purpose is to get unending material pleasure by following the Vedic process. And King Prachinavarishad was doing that, but after Narada Muni's teachings in the presence of the ministers, that we will see here in the next verse, what he did. In the presence of his ministers, can someone read it?
Hare Krishna. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king Prachinavarhi left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and went off to undergo austerities in a holy place known as Kapilashrama.
Okay. Long purport, but we will start with at the end. It is significant that when Maharaj Prachinabhari was convinced of the goal of life through the instructions of Narada, he did not wait even a moment to see his son's return. He left immediately. There were many things to be done upon return of his son, but he simply left them a message. He knew that his prime duty was. He simply left instructions for his son and went off for the purpose of spiritual advancement. This is a system of Vedic civilization. So the sons of King Prajinabharisad, they were performing austerities to learn detachments, so that they would not rule for their own sense enjoyment, but rather become qualified to perform their duty in the presence of great material opulence. They performed austerities for thousands of years. They performed austerities for a long time, but by Narada's blessings, because he wanted to see them as very deep devotees, Narada Muni had decided to liberate all the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. That he preached to King Prajinabharisad in this way. And the king had sent out his sons to perform austerities, so that they would come back and rule. And he wanted to wait for them to come back, but as soon as he heard the instructions of Narada Muni, he immediately left. He did not want even a moment to see his sons return. So Raghavacharya said that the message that King Prachinabharisad left was about how to organize the kingdom according to Varnashram. So he simply left them a message. He knew what his prime duty was. Text 82. Can someone read the translation?
Having undergone austerities and penances at Kapilashram, King Prachinabhari attained full liberation from all material designations. He constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of the Supreme Personality of God.
So what does it mean, freedom from all designations? To serve the Lord without the 16 coverings of the soul, which comprises the subtle body and the gross body, just serving as an eternal servant of the Lord. Shivershva Bahoy Nitya Krishna Das. That is bhakti. Full liberation of all material designations. This is devotional service. Devotional service is what removes all designations from the consciousness. And he understood that after hearing Narada Muni, that he wasn't the attachment that are in his mind, and that he wasn't the plans for enjoyment, Puranjani. The material intelligence of Puranjan, he understood, I'm not that intelligence. Nothing that exists is mine. All this has nothing to do with him. What to speak of his gross body, he now identified as being a servant of Krishna. Text 83, someone read.
Can I read, Maharaj?
Yes, please.
My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. Thank you.
Oh, that's a great blessing. Then text 84, someone read 84.
Yes. Can I read?
Yes,
The
sir.
narration. Yes, someone wants to read. Yes. Okay. This narration spoken by the great sage Narada is full of transcendental fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, this narration, when described, certainly sanctifies this material world. It purifies the heart of the living entity and helps him attain his spiritual identity. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. Thank you, Maharaj.
So, thank you. So, the potency of this knowledge is helpful. What that touches us, we should see the future. With our intelligence, we should see the future. We are all Puranjana. The body that we are so attached to is going to be crushed into dust. It is assured it will dukkhalayam avastidam. Why being attached to it? This narration awakens bodily detachment in the heart. This is required for developing attachment to Krishna. What causes the attainment of gross bodies? It's all these desires that we hide from everyone. That forces us to take one gross body after another. The identification with the gross and subtle body both must be given up. We are not even aware of all the things we store in our subtle body. Therefore, we should perform devotional service. So, now I will read a part of the purport. As indicated in verse 79, Narada Muni advised King Prachinavari to take to devotional service rather than waste time performing ritualistic ceremonies and fruitive activities. The vivid descriptions of the subtle and gross body in this chapter are most scientific, and because they are given by the great sage Narada, they are authoritative. Because these narrations are full of the glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This constitutes the most effective process for purification of the mind. As Sichitaya Mahaprabhu confirms, Seto Darpanam Arjanam, the more we talk of Krishna, think of Krishna, preach of Krishna, the more we become purified. This means that we have no longer to accept the hallucinatory, gross and subtle body, but instead attain our spiritual identity. One who tries to understand this instructive spiritual knowledge is delivered from the ocean of nations. Text 85, can someone read the last verse?
Hare Krishna. The allegory of King Puranjana, described here in according to authority, was heard by me from my spiritual master, and it is full of spiritual knowledge. If one can understand the purpose of this allegory, he will certainly be relieved from the bodily conception and will clearly understand life after death. Although one may not understand what transmigration of the soul actually is, one can fully understand it by studying narration.
Now there are two verses added by our acharyas, that yes. I read two of them, 1b and 2b. 1b. First, that if a living entity is developed in Krishna consciousness and is merciful to others, And if his spiritual knowledge of self-realization is perfect, he will immediately attain liberation from the bondage of material existence. The Srila Prabhupada speaks about being merciful in the purport that so it says, yeah. Can someone read the purport, the entire purport?
In this verse, the words Daya, Dijivesha, meaning mercy to other living entities, indicate that a living entity must be merciful to other living entities if he wishes to make progress in self-realization. This means he must preach this knowledge after perfecting himself and understanding his own position as an eternal servant of Krishna. Preaching this is showing real mercy to living entities. Other types of humanitarian work may be temporarily beneficial for the body, but because a living entity is spirit soul, ultimately one can show him real mercy only by revealing knowledge of his spiritual existence. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Swarupaya Krishnera Nityadas, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 20.108. Every living entity is constitutionally a servant of Krishna. One should know this fact perfectly and should preach it to the mass of people. If one realizes that he is an eternal servant of Krishna but does not preach it, its realization is imperfect. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura therefore sings, Dushtamana tumi kishera Vaishnava, Pratishtara tare nirijanera gare, Tava Harinama kevala kaitava. My dear mind, what kind of Vaishnava are you? Simply for false prestige and a material reputation, you are chanting the Hare Krishna mantra in a solitary place. In this way, people who do not preach are criticized. The actual result of their so-called chanting in a secluded place, however, is that they sleep and think of women and money. Similarly, one who simply engages in temple worship, but does not see to the interest of the mass of people or cannot recognize devotees is called Tikar. Archayam eva haraye pujam ya shraddhaye ye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhaktaha prakrata smrataha. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.47.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now text 2b, everything within time is a dream. Can someone read the translation?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Okay. Everything happening within time, which consists of past, present, and future, is merely a dream. That is the secret understanding in all Vedic literature.
Secret understanding. Difficult to understand for us. Factually, all of material existence is only a dream. Thus there is no question of past, present, or future. Persons who are addicted to karma kanda vichar, which means working for future happiness through fruitive activities, are also dreaming. Similarly, past happiness and present happiness are merely dreams. Actual reality is Krishna and service to Krishna, which can save us from the clutches of Maya. For the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Mame vaye pabachante mayametam tarantite. Those who surrender unto me can easily cross beyond my illusory energy. So this is Bhagavad Dharma, that placing Krishna in the center of our life with great devotion and faith. Not that I'm the center and that I'm important in the whole thing, but to think that you are the center of existence and that you deserve respect, worship, etc. is only dreaming. Now to end this chapter, I'm not letting it go yet. I will read a poem of Srila Prabhupada. And this poem was Yes. Was written by Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan. It was about in 1958. That is just before 1 year before he received sannyas. That let's see if I find it here. Yep. So I'm sitting. The name is Srila Prabhupada's poem Vrindavan Bhajan, written by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami in 1958, and published that year in the magazine of the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti. Srila Prabhupada writes, I'm sitting alone in Vrindavan Dham. In this mood I am getting many realizations. I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I've no money, so they are a fruitless flowering. Krishna has shown me the naked form of material nature. By strength, it has all become tasteless to me today. Yasyam anagrinami arishyatatanam sanai. I hardly take away all the wealth of those upon whom I am merciful. How was I able to understand this mercy of the All-Merciful? Everyone has abandoned me, seeing me penniless. Wife, relatives, friends, brothers, everyone. This is misery, but it gives me a laugh. I sit alone and laugh. In this Maya samsara, whom do I really love? Where have my loving father and mother gone now? Where are all my elders who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names that as the froth on the seawater mixes again in the sea, Maya Samsara's play is just like that. No one is mother or father or personal relative, just like the sea foam. They remain but a short time, just as the froth on seawater mixes again in the sea. The body, made of 5 elements, meets with destruction. How many bodies does the embodied soul takes in this way? Its relatives are all related merely to the temporal body. But everyone is your relative brother on the spiritual platform. This relationship is not tinged with the smell of Mayas. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everyone. In relation to him, everyone in the universe is the same. All your relatives, brother, all the billions of jivas, when seen in relation to Krishna, they are all in harmony. Forgetting Krishna, the jiva desires sense gratification, and as a result is firmly grasped by Maya. So here the mood of Srila Prabhupada, how it reflects, how yes, a pure realized soul who has realized of all what we went through in this chapter. That good. We came at the end of the chapter, and we will now have a pause. It's 6:20. Let's meet again at 6:35 in 10 minutes. Short pause of 10 minutes, and then we will have a discussion. That,
Recording stopped.
thank you.
Recording in progress.
Hare Krishna. That, here we are again. So we have heard this chapter. We have heard about the reaction of King Praja, of King Prachinabarisat. He left a note. He left. So we have also heard this knowledge, but of course, are we going to do the same thing? Probably not. It means we may have to hear it again and again to become aware of all these aspects that so we have also heard Srila Prabhupada's mood from his poem that everything in time takes place in time is an illusion. Srila Prabhupada just laughed with all what happened. That this material life is a bad dream. That then we should not become further implicated in the dream. So, any comments or questions how to practice this knowledge? Yes, Mother Ambika?
I have two questions in my mind because we have been talking a lot about dreams and how we deal with so many souls or bodies in our dreams, and that sometimes the dreams are from the past life. So is there something that can indicate that this dream is not created by my mind particularly, but this is from the past life?
Okay.
And another question,
Yeah.
another question would be that because we have all these subtle desires within our subtle bodies, so if we are performing devotional service, how can we know that we are actually not on that platform if we are not aware of these desires?
Yeah.
Because somehow these devotional services, of course, austerities, but they need to be somehow suitable for the bodily constitution. Otherwise, we cannot remain healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do we make a distinction between these things?
So your first part of your question was, we dream sometimes, and is it a case of our mind, or is it something from our previous lives? That dreams have to do with attachments of the mind, for sure. And attachments can come from this life or previous life. But the attachment itself are illusory. Thus, it really doesn't matter that I got dreams in my youth which indicate my past life. That, but whether it's your past life or this life, both lives are illusory. So what does make it out it is a concoction anyway, that we think that we are these bodies. So yes, but even if we come to the conclusion, some dreams are related to our previous life and you can trace back your previous life. And what then? That you can only apply this knowledge here, that yes, I understand now why I get so much misery in my life. It's all the same attachment. So, yes, it's created by the mind, but your past life was also created by your mind. Because by your mind the gross body has grown, so it's all created by the mind. That's for sure. The second point is that all these desires are in our subtle body. How do we know on what platform that we are? That was your questions. If we are not aware of all these desires, that the stage where these desires, you become aware of them, it's called anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti. When I joined the temple 30 years ago, I was very happy coming out of the material entanglement, every day in association of devotees. I was thinking, a few weeks more and I'm a pure devotee. But then that didn't happen. A few weeks later, some things came to in my consciousness from which I was thinking they were gone forever. But by association of devotees, what happens? That this anartha nivritti starts. And it's like you have a glass of water, and on the bottom of the glass you have some sand. And above the sand is clear water. And then you take a spoon, put it in the glass and start to stir. And all this mud starts to come up. And that is what association of devotees does. That if one serves in association of devotees, then gradually this anartha nivritti starts, cleansing of the heart. And the process is that Krishna makes you aware of your anarthas. And that happens not all at once. Gradually, you start to understand. And gradually, the gross coverings are going, but then the subtle coverings, much more difficult. So yes, but whether we are aware or not, if we perform devotional service with the correct sincerity, I want to be pure, this anartha nivritti will take place in due course of time. And Krishna will make us aware, and if we are aware, then it destroys. You give it up. You understand, this attachment is my cause of my suffering. So yes, that is the process of becoming aware of these material desires. And that is facilitated very much by hearing. We hear today all this knowledge. And we know whatever desire we have in this world, not related to Krishna, that are material desires. and what keeps me in this world. But, therefore, we must always engage ourselves in devotional service and avoid, if we engage in devotional service, then you don't make new material desires. And the old material desires gradually become purified, go away. It's a gradual process. Dus dat helpt me dan, Vihe.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nilamani Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Pranam. Maharaj, in this section and yesterday's section also, there was a number of references to both the spiritual senses and the gross senses, right?
Yeah.
So, understanding is that the spiritual living entity has its own senses, and then we have these gross material senses, 10 material senses.
Yeah.
I'm trying to visualize, understand how the spiritual senses work. I mean, are there 10 spiritual senses, and how do these spiritual senses connect? I guess they connect through the subtle body, but how do they really connect to gross material senses, or is there a connection there?
That there is the subtle senses or the subtle body, and the gross senses or the gross body are coverings of the spiritual senses, the spiritual body. Spirit soul or spiritual body is the same, and the spirit soul has a form, and that form is pervaded through the consciousness all over this body. That's what Srila Prabhupada says again and again. He says the spiritual senses are there, but they are now covered over. So spiritual senses means, our real ego, that identifying as a servant of Krishna, the Jivan Mukta, the one who is liberated, that because we are here in the 4th canto, right? That because we have in the next canto, in the 5th canto, chapter 4, you will hear about Jivan Mukta, the liberated souls. 8 characteristics of a liberated souls explained by King Rishabhadev. Well, he had all these symptoms also, and also his father, King Nabi, was also Jivan Mukta. And in that liberated condition, one identifies completely with the spiritual body by absorption in Krishna and devotional service. By absorption completely in Krishna's service, seeing oneself as a servant of Krishna, one forgets the coverings, and one identifies with the real body, spiritual body. That spiritual body has been inactive, and therefore some of our acharyas say it's in a seed form. But when we start to develop devotional service, that spiritual body becomes active, because the spiritual devotional service is done in our real identity, in the spiritual body. It becomes active. But our awareness in the beginning is very low. We do perform devotional service with the senses, but our consciousness is not there. Our consciousness should be with Krishna. And if one comes to, if the heart is completely purified, goes to anartha-nivritti, and you come to Nishtha, you are liberated. Then after Nishtha Krishna reveals what kind of servant you are. And then finally you will find Krishna in the heart, Asakti, and the entire spiritual world. So a liberated devotee who has regained his spiritual identity, internally he identifies with that. And he forgets about the mind, the subtle body, the gross body, and then when he leaves his body, these coverings fall away, that's all. So that is Narada Muni's verse, Sarvopadi Nirmuktam Tat Parat Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikena Sevanam Bhakti Uttama. So pure devotional service is acting without any false designations. The real designation is Krishna Das. So that is a high level to come to that point. But devotional service is done in the liberated state by the spiritual senses. Because after Nishta we become fully aware of that. And we forget about the gross and subtle senses. That's what I learned from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. That there are so many references that he gives about that spiritual senses.
So Maya, just a little follow-up. So when we feel pain and suffering in this gross body, is that pain and suffering experienced by this living entity, the spiritual body? And is that through the spiritual senses somehow linking?
No. The pain is experienced in the mind. The mind is subtle material energy. And the mind and the subtle body is the real problem. That's what we heard. And it experienced in the mind. But the mind is not us. We identify with the mind. And therefore we identify with the suffering experienced by the mind. But we have nothing to do with it. This is deep philosophy. And we need to realize that gradually. But that realization is a byproduct of pure devotional service. Yes, then you don't suffer. Because your mind is with Krishna. Your mind, your conscience is not invested in the subtle and the gross body anymore. It's completely invested in your spiritual body and your relationship with Krishna. And then every moment becomes ecstasy. The gopis' feeling of separation was nothing than ecstasy, but no suffering. No suffering. So that is an important aspect we have to learn to. And Srila Prabhupada makes that clear. In many lectures he says, the gross and the subtle hand cannot exist without the spiritual hand. It cannot exist. So the real hand is a spiritual hand. But we cannot perceive it. It's too subtle. But we can perceive it when we attain pure devotional service, when the heart is purified. Then we forget about the gross and subtle body. Yeah. So this is Ashintya from the material platform. We can even not explain it properly in words. You must experience it. Does that help, Nilaman?
Yes, Maharaj, lots to think about there, but yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's something we should think about and not forget. that we are not this gross and subtle body, but the spirit soul which shares a form. Thank you. Mother Kanta, please.
Hare Krishna. Maybe I have a little bit silly question. It's on the verse 80, where Prabhupada said that Narada Muni departed and also invited him to Siddhaloka, means King Prachinabarhi. Why didn't he invite him to at least Vaikuntha or Galoka Vrindavana, but to Siddhaloka?
That was verse 80?
Yes, it's in the purport.
It's in the purport. Let's go back to... The great sage Maitreya Muni continued, the supreme devotee, the great Saint Narada, thus explained to King Prachinabhari the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. After giving an invitation to the king, Narada Muni left to return to Siddhaloka. Yeah, he gave an invitation to the king. Let's see what Prabhupada writes. But Narada Muni left to Siddhaloka because there he lives normally. Yes, that Siddhaloka and Brahmaloka are both within the same planetary system. Brahmaloka is understood to be the highest planet within this universe. Siddhaloka is considered to be one of the satellites of Brahmaloka. The inhabitants of Siddhaloka have all the powers of yogic mysticism. From this verse appears that the great sage Narada is an inhabitant of Siddhaloka. Although he travels to all planetary systems, all the residents of Siddhaloka are spacemen, and they can travel in space without mechanical help. The residents of Siddhaloka can go from one planet to another, and other individually by virtue of yogic perfection. After giving instructions to the great king Prachinabhari, Narada Muni departed and also invited him to Siddhaloka. Yeah, that don't know why he invited him to Siddhaloka, but King Prachinabhari finally went to Vaikuntha. That's so it's not mentioned there, and why he invited him to Siddhaloka. That of course it's nice to have the association of Narada Muni. So thank you. That,
Maharaj, is it that after the end of the day of Brahma, everybody in that loka gets transferred to the spiritual world?
Yeah, but that's the low process. That you have Nirviti Marg and Pavriti Marg. The Pavriti Marg is a gradual process of elevation. Finally you go to Tapaloka, Maraloka, Siddhaloka is also there. And they remain there till the end of the life of Brahma. And if the Brahma is a pure devotee, they go with him to the spiritual world. But that's a long time. Better not to take that Paviti Marg. It's too risky. You may fall down again before the end of the life of Brahma. But yes, theoretically, that's a possibility.
I thought, Maharaj, King Prachinabhari, he was not a pure devotee. To enter into Vaikuntha planet, you need to be a pure devotee.
Yeah, but he followed the process of purification. He he followed the instruction of Narada Muni and he became purified. It's not that he left and he went immediately to Vaikuntha. No, he started this process of purification and he finished it successfully. That because he was sincere, very serious. Is that okay, Ajahn? Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, that I think there was one hand more. Yes, Mother Madhura Dameshwari, please.
Hare Krishna, Dhanvat Pranam Maharaj.
Yeah.
Maharaj, one small doubt. My initiated name is Madhura Dameshwari. Spiritually, who is Madhura Dameshwari, Maharaj? That I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Say again.
I am initiated by my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Guru Maharaj. He gave me initiation name Madhura Dameshwari. Who is Madhura Dameshwari? Spiritually, who is Madhura Dameshwari?
Madhura Dameshwari. I don't know, but Madhura Dameshwari. That I think that's a good question to ask Jayapataka Maharaj. I don't know that, but if you get the answer, please let me know. That Madhura means sweet, and Dameshwari, the Ishvari, or the one who controls the Dham. That the one who controls, Dameshwari, who controls the Dham, could be, who controls Vrindavan, that and who is sweet. I don't know. That it's a very nice name. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj.
Good. Mother Goloka Vassini, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. Maharaj, I have a question. We understand that we have to engage our mind in Krishna's service, then only we can purify it. Then only we can go ahead in the spiritual life. But my question is, like, with impure mind, it is difficult to serve Krishna. And the solution is that we have to purify the mind to serve Krishna. And because of anarthas leads to offenses, and these offenses creates obstacles in the devotional service. So it looks like a loop, like because of impure mind I cannot serve Krishna purely, and unless I serve Krishna purely I cannot get out of it. So how to understand this?
You can, that's true. That's a vicious circle, because that's explained also by Haridas Thakur, how to enter Namabhas, which is Anartha-nivritti. We cannot enter because we have an offensive mentality, and that's because of the anarthas. So it seems a vicious circle, you cannot get out. So how to get out? The answer is mercy. And how to get the mercy? You try to please the spiritual master. When you try to please the spiritual master, then Krishna will help you to get out of this vicious circle. Another way to explain is, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham sattayuktanam vachtam pitapurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mamupayanti te. If you serve me with a little love, then I give you realized knowledge. But the problem is we don't have even that little love because of our anarthas. But if we serve and follow the instructions of the spiritual master sincerely, Krishna accepts that as a little love and is going to purify you. Therefore we need the mercy of the spiritual master. That is the key to get out, pleasing the spiritual master. Does that help? Look at us.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
So, Mother Lila Madhuri Lalita. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, my doubt is how to understand when some devotees say that Prabhupada came in their dream and gave them some instructions. So how can we connect it? As we read in this session, that everything, any dream we get, it is connected to our past life. So how do they get the new instructions from Prabhupada in their dream?
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes the spiritual master appears in dreams, and Srila Prabhupada had that also. He did not want to take sannyas, but three times the spiritual master appeared in a dream. You have to take sannyas. But these are very special, because sometimes spiritual master may appear, but it's an invention of our mind. We have to be careful that. And more than 30 years ago, when I started to chant Hare Krishna, then I was just 2 weeks. I was chanting 16 rounds. Prabhupada appeared in a dream, and he was sitting on a Vyasa-san with other devotees around him, and I was one of them. And he had a stack of small booklets in his hand, and he took one, he looked at me and gave this to me, and he said, "This is your passport for the spiritual world." And he gave me that booklet. But then he said, "But now you have to work on your visa. So you have to become purified first. You have to do the work." That I found interesting, but we have to be careful that because you have that sometimes. I'm a member of the Ministry for Sannyas, and a sannyas candidate comes, and I had a dream of Prabhupada. He said, "You should take sannyas." Prahlad Maharaj replied, "I had a dream of Prabhupada, and he said, you should not take sannyas." Anyway, it's a joke, but we have to be careful. It should be confirmed by Guru, Sadhana, and Shastra, these dreams. But yes, sometimes the spiritual master appears as in dreams, in especially rare occasions. Does that help, Leela, Madhuri, Lalita?
Yes, Maharaj.
Good.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Maharaj, when it comes for devotional service, Shravanam is also a devotional service, Kirtanam is also a devotional service. Means hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is also a devotional service. Preaching to somebody is also a devotional service. But sometimes when it comes simultaneously, at the same time, either I have to choose one, hearing or preaching. So which one should I give preference?
Well, there is a spiritual law that on the material platform, if you have something and you give that to someone else, you get rid of it. You don't have it anymore. But on the spiritual platform, if you try to give Krishna consciousness to others, then you get it. Krishna gives you the realization of the knowledge that you want. And that's mystical. So preaching is more important, but hearing is also important. But because to preach nicely, you must have heard nicely. And Srila Prabhupada said, if I have one quality, that is that I like to hear. So that is also very important. But what you hear, you preach without changing it, and Krishna will be pleased. Does that help? Okay. Thank you. Good. Then I think we are at the end of the class, and tomorrow we will continue with a new chapter, the activities of the Prachetas. And we have heard them in chapters before, and now that we are coming back to this Prachetas. Tomorrow we continue. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.
Yeah, thank you.